Hello. Welcome to Port Misery, a GH podcast where we try to figure out why everyone in Port Charles is so miserable this week. It's Tara, y'all. I'm gonna be so real with y'all. I was recording this and I got through like 20 minutes of this episode and realized that my mic wasn't on and I almost crashed out. I almost crashed out and I just want you to know that because I was real hurt. I was real hurt by it. But that aside, how's everyone doing? I hope you're doing okay. Please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm trying to remember to do that in the beginning as well as in the end. Like, promote myself. But as you can see from the thumbnail, if you are, watching this on YouTube or Spotify, I'm not sure if it gets a unique thumbnail for Apple Podcasts or anything else, but definitely for YouTube and Spotify. If you've seen the thumbnail, you know that this episode's going to be a little bit different because I don't want to talk about what made the characters miserable this week. I'm going to be so real with y'all. I watched about 5 minutes of each episode and I was over it. I was over it. I was like, yeah, this is fine. Like, I know that Willow was found not guilty. Duh. I said that was going to happen last week. So she's gonna be found not guilty and we're gonna deal with double jeopardy, so none of this shit matters. None of this shit matters. Um and so as I said in my video last week, I don't really like where this story has gone. I know some of you have varying opinions about this. Some of y'all are kind of ambivalent about it all. You're like, listen, I just wanted it to be Willow, so if that's what we got, I'm just gonna rock with that. Like, fuck it, we ball, right? Respect. Mad respect for that. Ultimately, that's what I'm gonna have to do because I'm not crashing out on the show. Some of you really liked it, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that you're wrong to like it. I just kind of want to. I'm just giving an explanation for why I don't really like it. And so, obviously, last week we found out that Willow is indeed the person who shot Drew, and that this was some, it's intricate, premeditated crime, right? She's just a cold-hearted bitch. But also, no, she's not. And how dare you talk about that? Because the writers really want us to think that she is just a mother. She's a desperate mother, and what could she do? Like, they want her to be both. Like, they want to illustrate that what Willow did is this cold, calculating crime, but also that she is a victim who snapped and was driven to this by Drew and Michael's behavior, right? Like, she's manipulative to the fact that she has manipulated events so perfectly that Drew and most of the cast up until like last week was like convinced that Michael framed her. Some of them still think that Michael framed her. They're just like, yeah, he got that dog in him, right? But they also want us to believe that she is just driven by a mother's love and desperation. In other words, they want Willow to be both wrong for her actions, but not for her motivations. And that has kind of just turned me off the story entirely because it's very clear to me that y'all don't care about her motivations. You don't even know what her motivations are. You're so interested in justifying her actions in service of preserving Willow as a character more than you're interested in telling a complex and compelling story that would help us relate to Willow as a character, even if we don't agree with her actions. And so, talking about all that made me think, what makes a story good, right? Like, specifically soaps, but like in general any story. Like, what makes a story good? Like, what are the elements that you need to create a good story? And so, in traditional storytelling, you really only need five things, right? You need characters, you need conflict, you need a plot, you need a setting, and you need a theme, right? So, like, every good story has relatable, flawed characters with clear and delineated goals that we, the viewer, can empathize with, if not straight out root for, right? Like, we're either rooting for the character, but even if we're not rooting for him, we understand why they're doing it, right? Even if it's a basic reason, like Whitey's African warlord, like he just loves doing shenanigans. He tried to move his minerals from Africa for reasons, but like he's trying to pull one over on Sonny. Like we don't root for his ass. I mean, some people might root for him because some people hate Sonny, but we don't really root for him. But we understand his motivations, especially when they start dealing with his son. Like Sonny starts like locking his son up in a room. We're like, okay, well, I get why he would kind of pop off about that. Like, who wouldn't? Um, there also like that goes into my next point that there needs to be this underlying conflict, right? That you need an inherent tension either from internal struggles or external struggles, but like you need that to drive the plot forward. On a soap, you have like the internal struggles that the characters deal with on a day-to-day basis. Like these are the storylines that are solely character driven and that can last for years, if not decades. Like there are storylines from the 90s that are still being brought up today with characters like Sonny and Jason and Laura and stuff like that, right? But then you also have these very external struggles that are more plot driven, where there's a situation happening that's sort of driving characters to do certain things. Both are necessary on the soap, but plot plot driven storylines should be shorter than character driven storylines. Like I don't think a plot driven storyline should go past 2 months, to be honest. And 2 months is really pushing it. That's a long ass story, to be honest. The consequences of the story can go on forever, but the story itself should really not go past 2 months. Because that's fucking crazy. But I digress. Um, there also needs to be a structured sequence of events with clear beginnings, rising tension, and satisfying conclusions. Yes, how you end a story actually matters. I feel like a lot of the times the writers of this show are like doing a cop out where they're like, well, the show never ends. Like, it's General Hospital. It's been on for 63 years. Like, it's never ending. So, like, who gives a shit about how we end a story? Well, how you end the story actually matters. Because, like, yes, the overarching show of General Hospital, so like the town of Port Charles carries on, but individual storylines should end and begin frequently, right? Like you have the larger story of all the characters being trapped in this town together, but you know they're individually going through things, right? And like in an individual story you might have twists and reversals. Notice I said reversals and not misdirects. Like you could go back on some shit, but don't lie to me. Right? Don't just change the fucking story because it doesn't serve your purpose anymore. Like just, actually what you thought happened isn't what happened. And now you're looking at it from a different point of view. Like, and this is not to say you can't have misdirects. Because misdirects are not necessarily changing the story too. Like, you can make the idea that a misdirect is like we want you to look over here because you really should be looking over there. And so you can have misdirects too, but like there should be a satisfying conclusion. There should be a clear beginning. And you should be able to see the story beats as we go through, right? You also need to have an immersive time and place that grounds the story and really provides context for the actions that are happening. One of my main complaints over the past, few months, a few years to be honest, if you go back and listen to Poor Misery in like 2022, I'm saying like, what time is it? Right? What time is it? How many days have passed? What's going on? Like, they really do jump from like when Sam died in 2024, it was like Halloween. And it was Halloween for like 3 weeks. It was Halloween for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden it was Thanksgiving. It was crazy. Like we jumped so because we didn't actually have a set time that grounded the story moving forward. Like shit was happening, but we didn't know how long it was happening for. And that actually matters. It does matter that we understand how long time is, like how time is progressing in Port Charles, to understand how we should feel about a story. Like how long Drew and Will are having an affair actually matters, right? Because, like, there's a difference between, like, nipping something in the bud immediately and something dragging on for months and months and months. And the show never commits to giving us a concrete time because it feels like it doesn't have to. Once again, because it doesn't feel like it needs a conclusion because the show never ends for the 63-year-old soap. Okay, sure. But the setting, the time, and the place in which you do your story actually helps to give the characters immediate motivation, drive the plot forward, and help the audience keep up with the overall story you're trying to tell. And so you kind of kneecap every facet of the story from like the characters on the screen to the audience watching it by not giving us a set time, to be honest, by not caring about the setting. Example, just to make my point, example. So, like, if a character is locked in a hotel room to prevent them from talking to another character, then their immediate motivation becomes to exit the room. It's a plot driven thing, right? The plot has put them in the room, and so in the immediate aftermath, they need to get out the room. That's their motivation. But their overarching motivation, the driving motivation that leads to this immediate need to get out the room, is because they got to talk to somebody, right? We got to tell somebody something, and someone's trying to stop us from telling somebody something. And so that storyline of stopping someone from telling somebody something, that storyline can drag as long as you need it to drag, right? Because it's a driving story that's compelled, that's motivated through characters, right? Where a character being locked in the room, that's a plot device. You actually can't have a character locked in a room for 4 fucking months. You can't do that. Why would you do that? Just like, and we've seen stories where people do that before. Y'all bring up Carly in the panic room or Rick in the basement. I understand where we have done that, but even those storylines are used to have a character really. Let me rephrase this. Putting a character in a hotel room is a plot driven story 99% of the time. But that 1% of the time that it's not, the room itself that they're locked in becomes like a mirror that, like, the character itself is forced to confront their own character. It's not about other characters now, it's about confronting yourself. And I'm going to get into what I mean about that in a little bit. But my main point aside is that there are character driven stories that are driven by overarching motivations, and then there are plot driven stories that are driven by immediate motivations, right? The difference between needing to talk to someone and needing to get out of a room. Okay? So, the final thing that a good story really needs is a theme, an underlying message, or a universal truth that gives the story deeper meaning and connects it to the larger events of the show, of the overarching story being told. And so your plot driven story should connect to the larger story being told, either in the past or moving forward. Great stories utilize both, where the motivations, the overarching motivations, are dictated by the past, like, trauma of the characters, and the consequences of the plot driven story move the character going forward, right? that overarching motivation of trauma is what's moving characters, and the plot driven like machinations are just kind of helping move them from set piece to set piece almost. But let me like let me digress, right? I want to focus on like what makes a truly good story. And it's this idea that, you know, the emotional connections between the characters, or the growth and change those characters undergo as they evolve through the adversity they face during the story, is what really matters. Stories are not just series of events. They're not just shit that happens. Like, well, shit happens and then characters dealt with it and then more shit happened. No. Good stories should be emotional journeys where characters that we know and love, characters that we either know or love or at least can relate to, overcome challenges leading to a change or a new understanding of who that character is and what just happened, right? And so that led me to the question of, if I hate the Who Shot Drew storyline, and I think it's a terrible story, which I do, what is the best story General Hospital has ever told? Like, what is that story? Now, this is obviously a very subjective question, right? And it's going to have a different answer depending on who's being asked. And so, what I consider the best General Hospital story is perhaps not what you consider the best General Hospital story. Maybe you like the Port Charles Hotel fire in 2004, or Luca Laura's return in 1993. Like, maybe you like the Asian Quarter storyline from 1985, or like Migos Cassadine trying to freeze the world. For me, my favorite storyline of all time has yet to be topped is the Metro Court hostage crisis in 2007. If you're on YouTube or Spotify, you already saw the thumbnail, you already know what time it is. The episode is probably going to be titled Why the Metro Court Hostage Situation is the Best Story GH Ever Told. So, according to me, obviously, if you disagree, feel free to disagree. But I'm going to kind of get into why I think it's the greatest story ever told and what it does so well that the Who Shot Drew storyline is not doing. And so let's talk about the Metro Court hostage situation. Now, this is not going to be a recap of the whole story. You could watch this story. It's on YouTube right now. For what I'm about to say, I did not watch anything leading up to the Metro Court hostage situation, and I didn't watch anything after it ended. And so I want to preface that before you're like, well, what happened before? Like, that does not matter for the point I'm trying to make. And what happened after, I bring up a little bit of what happened after, but once again, did not matter for the point that I'm trying to make. But let me know in the comments if there is some context that you think is super important from before or after this storyline, that will help me understand it better. That's what I'll say. But the Metro Court hostage crisis is arguably one of the most well-known storylines amongst the GH fandom. Like I said, it's on YouTube. And thanks to the power of YouTube, it's probably one of the most watched storylines. People who have, just started watching GH 5, 6 years ago have seen this storyline. They've gone back and watched it. Obviously, the show references it, frequently. Even if you don't even think about them referencing it, they're usually something attached to it. It was a huge storyline. The story focuses on the Metro Court Hotel, which was then owned by Carly and Jax. They were I don't think they were married at this point. I think that Jax was trying to marry Carly and Sonny wanted her back. Carson, yay. But the hotel is being hijacked by Jerry Jax, who is Jax's older brother. And this is like a massive storyline that pretty much every member of the cast is a part of. There's only 3 sets really being used. It's the GH set. It's, maybe the Quartermain mansion, because I know that Luke and Tracy are dealing with stuff, and it's the Metro Court, and it's outside and inside the Metro Court. So you got like the people being held hostage inside the Metro Court. You got all the law enforcement outside. Jason trying to figure out a way in. Patrick's having a breakdown. Like the whole cast is dealing with this, right? And so you would think that since this is this massive story that involves every single member of this cast, that this story must be months and months and months and months and months long. This must be the main story of 2007. This must take up at least 6 months of our time. And while I will make the argument that it is the most important story of 2007, this story finished in a mere 20 days. Yes, 20 fucking days. That is how long it took Bob Guza to get every single person out that hotel. Yes, honey. The story begins January 31st, 2007, with Jerry Jacks taking everybody hostage, and by February 19th, 2007, same year, everyone is out that bitch. And this is not to say, like I said, this is not to say that there are not far reaching consequences that came out of the hostage crisis. Consequences that will reverberate on the show for years that we're still fucking dealing with. That, like, Jason brought up Alan during Monica's funeral and stuff, during that storyline. And that happened 18 years ago. But he's still dealing with the trauma, right? But the crisis itself, the storyline itself, where we're with Jerry Jacks taking these people hostage, that lasted 20 days. That wrapped very quickly. Why? Why? Why didn't the writers drag the crisis itself out longer? It was a popular story. We all loved it. We were living. So why? I really think there are 2 answers for this. One is very simple, and the other one is a bit more complex. So let me start with the simple answer. They couldn't. They couldn't drag the story out because they literally wrote the ending into their story. They started at the end. They were kind of doing this like 24 where every episode was dealing with a different hour because like we were on a time limit with this storyline. They wrote the ending into the beginning, and they put themselves on a strict time limit that they could not break. They had 12 hours before the briefcase blew up and took out like half the Metro Court with it, right? And so the story really starts with Sam McCall dressed like the hostage takers jumping out the window to warn the police that the gunmen are about to blow up the building and kill everybody inside. We, the audience, have no idea what's going on. None. I turned this shit on and I did a double take. I was like, what's going on here? Did I miss an episode? What's happening? Because, like, dead serious, dead ass. They just started this shit. Like, the show does not prime us for this story at all. It all just happened. Like one day we were all watching GH and it's business as usual. People having breakfast at Kelly's, people going to the hospital for plot driven reasons, we scheming, we fighting, soap shit. We doing GH soap shit. And the next we're outside the Metro Court with the PCPD trying to figure out how the fuck we got here. How did we get here? I'm gonna be so real with you. I was hooked. I was in. I was like, yes, this was one of the most brilliant ways to start a story. And I don't think that GH has ever topped themselves on it to this day. Like, so good. Like, obviously you're trapped because like you don't want to have to repeat yourself and people will be like, oh, it's like the Metro Court. But, you know, never top this in my book. It's just grade A classic GA story, right? But let's be fair. Let's be fair. Just because a story starts well, it does not guarantee that it's going to end well, right? Because I would be very remiss if I said that the Who Shot Drew storyline didn't start amazingly, right? That shit was great. I understood why it happened. I had a laundry list of suspects who could have done it. I was making tier lists. I was real excited until I wasn't. Until I wasn't. And it's upsetting. But the Metro Court hostage situation, unlike the Who Shot Drew storyline, it starts great and it ends even better because it doesn't drag itself out. That like Who Shot Drew decided to drag itself out because we were liking it, right? And so like let's let it rock. Let's take it to 2026. But the Metro Court hostage situation doesn't do this. Like I said, they are locked in with their ending already written and a timer on the clock. But that's not the sole reason that the Metro Court hostage situation doesn't drag itself. They could have found ways to drag it. They could have found ways to stop time. They do that shit all the time. The reason that the Metro Court hostage situation doesn't drag itself out is because at its core, the crisis itself doesn't fucking matter. The crisis is rather irrelevant. The crisis is secondary to everything else that's happening. The situation of being held hostage is a plot device. It's just a situation that they are in. It's just the setting. It's not the main motivation for the character's actions moving forward. It's their immediate motivation. Some of them got to get out right now. Alan Quartermain, he's having a heart attack. He got to get out this bitch. Robin's been shot. She needs to get out this bitch. Liz is having a baby. And so, yes, their immediate concern is getting out of the hotel because these things are happening. There's a bomb in the vault, but it's not the main motivation for every character sitting inside the lobby or outside or at GH. It's not the main character motivation. Yes, for the characters both inside and outside the motivation, I can't even speak. For the characters both inside and outside the Metro Court, the external motivations are to exit the hotel. However, it's not the driving motivation. And so what drives the characters in the Metro Court lobby? And so, as I said, pretty much the entire cast is involved in the Metro Court hostage crisis. But for the point I'm trying to make about good soap storytelling, and for the purposes of time, because if I went through every single character's individual motivation, this is going to be an 8-hour long video. Go watch that shit on YouTube. It's real good and it's not that long. But I just want to focus on 4 characters: Jerry Jacks, Jason Morgan, Sky Chandler, and Maxie Jones. So Jerry is the main gunman. He is the leader of this gang who takes the Metro Court hostage. He's there to retrieve a briefcase that was placed in the vault of the Metro Court by Lorenzo Alcazar, who they had to turn evil because for a second it seemed like they were trying to Sonny Corinthos him and make him like a mobster with a heart of gold, but then they decided that GH is actually doing Highlander rules and there can only be one mobster, and Lorenzo Alcazar had to go. And so they decided to make him evil, and now he's putting like mysterious briefcases in the Metro Court vault that got bombs attached to them and having gunmen take the Metro Court hostage to get the briefcase. It was a whole thing. It was a mess. But it is very clear that Jerry is merely a vehicle for Lorenzo. While he might be in charge of the immediate events in the hotel, his actual motivations for most of the storyline remain unclear. We don't know how attached he is to any of this. He really just seems like a hired gun for Lorenzo, right? Um, Jerry himself has a history on the show. He's, like I said, he's the older brother of Jasper Jax, who was one of the main characters at that time. Even before Jax came on the show, he was engaged to Bobby Spencer at one point, so he actually predates Jax being on the show. But when he takes the Metro Court hostage, he had been on the canvas in over a decade. And it's very clear that whatever he was off screen doing deeply changed his ass, and now neither the characters nor the audiences know what he about to do, right? Like, we don't know this man. He's on one. In fact, we don't even know that this is Jerry until the crisis is over. He going by Mr. Craig. So we don't even know who he is. Because if we knew who he was, then we'd be like, bro, why are you doing this to your brother's hotel? The fuck? But he's really just this kind of like mystery man. And so during the crisis, he isn't really treated like a fully fleshed out character, but instead acts as a vehicle to move other storylines already in progress forward. Remember how I said this storyline came out of nowhere and how it just kind of started? Well, that does not prevent writers from moving all of the current storylines along just because the crisis happened, right? Instead, they do the opposite. The hostage crisis becomes this sort of vehicle, this sort of apparatus that forces most of the characters to confront issues that they have been avoiding. The crisis itself is not a plot, but a setting. And this setting provides characters nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. A character can't just storm off when they're confronted with something they don't want to deal with. They can't hide from it. Instead, they're forced to deal with it and each other because they're stuck. So let's look at some characters. Take Carly and Robin. These hoes have been enemies since the late 90s. And all of a sudden, because of this situation, these two are forced to reconcile all of the animosity that they've had for one another after Jerry randomly decides to shoot Robin and force Carly to keep her alive, literally forcing them to confront all of the bad blood that's ever been between them as Robin lies bleeding out on the fucking floor. Chef's kiss. Couldn't write a better fucking metaphor if we tried, right? In this situation, Jerry is not being used as a fully fleshed out character whose motivations are necessary for the plot. He is more of this sort of Swiss Army plot device that's forcing characters to confront the issues that they've been avoiding, issues that predate the Metro Court hostage crisis. Let's look at Jason and Sky for a second. So while Carly and Robin were over dealing with the years-long animosity as Robin bleeds out on the floor, the story arc that we're in forces peak characters like Jason and Sky to really confront the more immediate conflicts in their lives that up until that point they've kind of been avoiding, right? This is a bit more complex for Jason than it is for Sky, because while Sky and pretty much everybody else, with the exception of a few people, is really dealing with one underlying issue that's driving their motivations to escape, Jason actually has two. For Jason, on the one hand, he's got the love triangle that he's in with Sam and Elizabeth. But he's also got this long standing ambivalence that he has for the Quartermains ever since he lost his memory in 1996. This idea that, they see him as family and he disagrees. And so let's start with the love triangle and we'll come back to the Quartermains in a sec. Jason is with Sam. He loves Sam, but he hasn't really gotten over her sleeping with Rick. And even though he knows that it's her choice to be with him, regardless of what he does with his life and with his job, he's still extremely worried that her proximity to him will put her in danger since she got shot last time they were together, almost died. However, he can't shake his connection to Elizabeth and the nagging feeling that she's keeping something from him, specifically around the baby she's carrying. Put a pin in that, right? We're going to come back to Jason in a second. But before I do that, let's talk about Sky because it leads into the complications with Jason. So Sky, on the other hand, she is one of the few characters who isn't in the hotel. She's at the hospital with Lorenzo, who's dealing with like a gunshot wound and memory loss from being shot in the head by Sonny. And her relationship with Lorenzo is, let's say, complicated, right? Sky is this character who is constantly in search of family, in search of a place where she belongs. She's famously doesn't know who her father is and has spent a huge portion of her life and her storyline searching for him. A search that has led her to be on not one, not two, but three separate ABC soaps. This shit is crazy. She been on All My Children, One Life to Live, and General Hospital. Crazy, right? Um, in short, Sky equates family with biology, right? She equates having a biological connection to someone because that is what she has been seeking her whole life. So by the time we get to the Metro Court hostage situation, Sky is not only dating Lorenzo Alcazar, she has a child with him. In her eyes, they are a family because they have that biological connection through their daughter. And it's that feeling of familial loyalty that drives every decision that Sky makes. She's initially on Lorenzo's side, but that's all fucking tested when she learns that her adopted father, Alan Quartermain, is in the Metro Court suffering from a heart attack because of Lorenzo's bullshit. But in the end, Sky chooses to keep Lorenzo's secrets. She chooses to put the biological connection she has to him over the connection she has with Alan. But that act profoundly changes her. Alan dies in this story, and he uses his dying breath to pretty much kick her raggedy ass out the fucking family. Right? It's devastating to her. But by the time we reach the end of her time on GH, which is only, I think, about 4 months after this storyline concludes, she's gone. Not only is she not keeping Lorenzo's secrets anymore, she's actually orchestrating his death personally. Personally letting Jason in the house to get his ass got. Everything that happens to Sky moving forward is driven by both the events of the Metro Court hostage crisis, but also that longer search for family, that longer search for connection. Like Willow, Sky is being a big old dummy who chooses to ignore the red flags of a trash ass man out of a warped sense of loyalty to her child. Like Willow, she is doing all of this based off of a mother's love and desperation, tied to the notion that she's biologically linked to Lorenzo, whether she likes it or not. However, unlike with Willow, the writers allow us to understand Sky's motivation to stand by Lorenzo during the immediate crisis, even if we don't agree with her. We understand that she feels like she owes this man her loyalty because he is her father's daughter, and that ties to her larger story of being a daughter without a father. They don't try to make her likable or rootable. The story is not made unclear in service of a fucking gag. It's laid out plainly. You can be on Sky's side with this shit, or you could not be on her side. And to be honest, I'm pretty sure most people were not on that whole side. They're like, fuck her, dumbass bitch. But even though we may have disagreed with her, we were very clear on why she was doing everything that she does over the course of the hostage crisis and after. We understand that she's doing this for her family. Her motivations don't change. Her definition of what family is what changes. That's what changes. She realizes that sharing a biological connection with someone doesn't make them family, and that's what allows her to truly embrace herself as a quartermain, even though she ain't got no biological connection to these people, and call Jason on the phone and tell his ass to come here and put a bullet in Lorenzo's ass. That is a compelling story arc, and I don't like that hoe, and I'm not meant to like her. You don't have to like everybody, but if you can understand them, the story is still good. It's still fulfilling. It's still satisfying. Let's go back to Jason. Remember how I said he didn't have one conflict that he needed to confront, but two, and the other one was his ambivalence towards the Quartermains? So this plays out so well in this story arc, as it's one of the handful of times that this show chooses to acknowledge how spread thin Jason Morgan truly is in Port Charles. He's at the Metro Court. Jerry is holding Carly, Sunny, Sam, Liz, Emily, Robin, and Alan hostage. In addition, he got to think about freaking Lulu, the daughter of Luke Spencer. He got to think about Emily's love, Nicholas Cassadine. Maxie Jones is in the vault with one of the gun bins. Like, the story really sets up early that Jason can't save everybody. And in the end, choices gonna have to be made. Who's more important to you? And so those choices are made even more complicated when he learns that the child that Liz is carrying is actually his and not her husband Lucky's, as everyone thought, as she told everybody. And so that tea comes out in the Metro Court hostage situation. And so now he's got to reconcile with the fact that saving Liz is not just saving a woman that he loves, but saving his child as well. And then when you consider the fact that Robin, which is one of his first loves after he became Jason Morgan, that's his first love, she's been shot. Alan, his father, is having a heart attack. The conflict for Jason evolves throughout the arc. It really moves from being who will Jason choose in a love triangle to who will Jason prioritize in this crisis. Is he gonna put love? And if he chooses love, who does he love? Is he gonna choose family? If he chooses family, who's actually his family? Is it Sonny? Is it Carly? Is it Sam? Is it Alan? Is it Emily? Or is he gonna choose revenge? Because he can also just say, fuck all these people, I'm going after Jerry. And in the end, Jason's story is less about who he chooses and more about who he doesn't choose. His father, Alan. And so throughout the crisis, Jason could really compartmentalize his choices. He doesn't focus on Alan because he doesn't feel like he needs to focus on Alan because his sister Emily is a medical student and she's better equipped to help him. And so he doesn't have this immediate concern for Alan. This is to say that Jason is unconcerned for his father. Quite the opposite. But he accepts that there isn't much that he can do for him in the hotel, right? That like the best thing that he could do for his dad is to get him out the hotel. And that involves messing with Jerry, not trying to be a hero to his daddy, right? And so it's not really until after the crisis is over that Jason's real choice and the consequences of those choices really come into focus. So after everyone gets out of the Metro Court, Jason is presented with two options: stay with his dying father or go after Jerry. Jason, having already compartmentalized and decided that the best thing to help his father is not to be there for him, but to protect him from this dangerous man, chooses to go after Jerry and leaves Alan at GH. Only to learn a short while later that Alan suffered another heart attack at the hospital and dies before Jason can get back to him. That decision of Jason to go after Jerry instead of staying with Alan has affected Jason to this day. To this day, that decision haunts him. We saw that with Monica's death last year. Because Jason believed his family didn't like the person he became after his accident, he allowed himself to prioritize those he felt accepted who he actually was in the present moment. And so that meant placing the animosity between the Corinthos and Alcazar crime families above his own father. And that choice had devastating consequences for him moving forward. The family that was once so desperate to have his ass back ultimately blames him for choosing revenge over them. But for Jason, that's what he felt like he was doing. He felt like he was choosing them. In the moment, Jason truly believed that going after Jerry was how he was protecting his family, was how he was showing his family that he loved them. It's not until Alan dies that he realizes that that family isn't about seeking vengeance, but about being present for your family when they need you. And that's always been Jason's problem. He don't know how to just be here for these people. He's just too busy feeling judged by them. And that lesson that all his family wants is for him to be there, that is a lesson that Jason is forced to learn over and over and over and over again. And it starts from this storyline. It's so good. And so Another thing I want to talk about is how the setting can change a plot. And so it's very clear at this point that the hostage crisis is merely a setting for the larger plots unfolding, right? It's this larger setting for the Jason Morgan Dick war between Liz and Sam to truly blow up. It's this moment of Carly and Robin coming into some reckoning, and Robin realizing that she loves Patrick and vice versa, and Sonny trying to get Carly back, and Carly realizes that while she loves Sonny, she loves Jack still, and all these other things are happening. Right, the crisis is really secondary to all of these other things happening. Unlike the shooting of Drew, the crisis itself is less important than the conflicts that the crisis brought to the surface. This is most evident in Maxie Jones's part of this storyline. Unlike the other characters taken hostage, Maxie is not in the lobby but in the vault with one of the gunmen named Cooper Barrett. Through her, we get a completely different perspective on the hostage crisis. For Maxie, the hostage crisis acts as a vehicle for her to explore all the issues that she's been ignoring. It's like I was saying earlier about Carly in the panic room, that the vault really represents a mirror like to which Maxie is forced to face herself and her own choices. She starts to talk to Cooper to kind of pass the time because they're stuck in this vault. And she starts to tell him about her fraught relationship with her parents, her abysmal academic performance. She is going to PCU at the time. The fact that outside of her family, she really doesn't have any friends. How she's still dealing with the death of her boyfriend, Jesse. How she stole pills for Lucky because she wanted to use him as a replacement for Jesse, and how when it all fell apart, she faked a pregnancy to keep him. She tells him, and more importantly, she tells herself that she's a mess. And it's the first time she's really vocalizing this. People have been calling her a mess this entire time, and she was like, I don't care what you have to say. Who the fuck are you to say this to me? Let's talk about what you do. Let's talk about you. This is really the first time that she's like, I do suck. Damn. In other words, the vault acts like a cage that prevents Maxie from running away from her problems, many of which are clearly self-induced. Instead, she's forced to confront who she really is and what she's done. But the vault also gives her perspective. It allows her to compare her bad behavior to the larger situation that she finds herself in. Yeah, she's made some mistakes, but not take a whole fucking hobby, like hotel lobby hostage level mistakes. And what about her captor? So she's stuck in the vault with Cooper, and they're talking, they're starting to bond. This is a great example of how a change of setting can change the overall plot of the story. And so, besides Jerry, Cooper is really the only other character from the hostage takers that's given any type of motivation. And we learned that he's just doing a job. He doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just wanted to get in, get out, and get paid. And this helps to recontextualize the hostage takers away from Jerry. While Jerry is full of unknown reasons for doing all this bullshit, the other gunmen are completely in the dark. They don't know what's in the briefcase either. This is not personal for them, it's business. And because Cooper is forced to confront what he's actually doing because he's stuck in the vault with Maxie, he doesn't like it. He's like, oh shit, maybe we are the fucking baddies. The setting of the vault acts to both humanize Cooper and Maxie and justify what happens next. When the vault opens, Maxie helps him escape, which is weird but not out of character, given the fact that she spent 12 hours with the guy and now knows that he isn't some evil automaton. He's a real person with a conscience. Even Maxie letting him go has far reaching consequences, as Cooper's identity is eventually found out by Sonny, who promptly forces him to join the PCPD as a plant for the Crypto Crime Organization. This directly leads to Cooper's death in the text message killer storyline. In other words, the Metro Court hostage crisis is not the character driven plot that you think it is. It's the setting that allows characters to work through the issues that they have been avoiding. The hostage crisis doesn't drive any plot. It acts as a setting for several other plots to unfold, right? Because at their core, good stories are driven by characters, not plot. What makes the Metro Court hostage crisis such a memorable storyline is not found in the crisis itself. Like, don't get me wrong, the days we follow the characters, both inside and outside of the hotel, are very good. Like, it's a great watch. Seriously, one of the reasons this is not an in-depth recap, on top of the fact that it would be too long, is because I genuinely want newer viewers to go back and watch it as unspoiled as possible. And so there's so many things that I didn't bring up that are so fascinating, that like when you watch them, you'll be like, oh, that's why that happens, because of something that happened from this storyline. It's crazy. But what truly makes the Metro Court hostage crisis a truly great story are the consequences that are created from it. This storyline led to a lot of different stories. The text message killer, the black and white ball, and the death of Emily Quartermain, Monica falling off the wagon, the death of Lorenzo Alcazar, Spixie, Liaison, Lou Sam. So many stories, so many couples come from this story. Scrubs comes out of this storyline. And more importantly, it didn't drag for no reason, right? They didn't expand it out because we loved it so much. The story arc was completed in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks, but the implications of that storyline reverberated for years. Some of it is still being felt to this day. People still associate Jerry Jacks with the crisis. Jason still deals with the guilt of not being able to say goodbye to his father. Sky, while she initially sided with Lorenzo Alcazar during the crisis, she eventually comes to the realization that having a daughter with Lorenzo doesn't make him her family. Instead, she realizes that it's the Quartermains that are her family, biology or not, and that her daughter not having a biological connection to them doesn't make them any less family, and that her having a biological connection to Lorenzo doesn't mean that he has to be family, and more importantly, that Lorenzo is a danger to all of them. But Sky would take another 4 months to come to this realization. But that didn't mean that the story arc, of the Metro Court hostage situation needed to drag out. Just Sky's storyline herself needed to go through that, right? The Metro Court hostage situation done in 2 weeks. Perfect. And there's a reason that story didn't need to be dragged out. You could drag out Jason's man pain and Sky coming to the realization that family be family. But the reason that the Metro Court hostage situation didn't need to be dragged out is because the Metro Court hostage crisis was never driven by its overarching plot of a bunch of gunmen taking the Metro Court hostage. The hostage crisis is quite secondary to everything else that unfolds during the hostage crisis. The hostage crisis is literally the least of our fucking problems. It drove characters' immediate motivations, but it wasn't their driving motivation, nor was it ever the main story we were following. Even though all the characters were thrown into the same storyline, the show still operated as if they weren't. Each character wasn't concerned with the same issues they would have, or each character was concerned with the same issues they would have been concerned with if they weren't being held hostage. Jason would still be reconciling with who do I choose, Sam or Elizabeth. He would still be ambivalent towards his family. Sky would still be reconciling with that bitch ass Lorenzo Alcazar. Right? Maxie would still be secretly knowing that she ain't shit. These things would still be happening with or without the hostage crisis. Right? The hostage crisis isn't the story. It was the setting in which individual stories were taking place in, which takes me back to the original question. What makes a good soap story? Using the Metro Court hostage crisis as the template, a good soap story is driven by the motivations of the characters and not the machinations of the plot. One of the biggest problems I have with the Who Shot Drew storyline is that they are more concerned with hiding the big Willow reveal from the audience than they are in exploring the motivations Willow truly had to do this. It completely ignores her own role in her current situation and instead wants to tell us that she just snapped. But also that she's a cold and calculating person capable of shooting a man in cold blood and framing her ex-husband for it. Right? She's not given connections to her larger story. She's not given time in a vault to have self-reflection. She's just both trapped and free at the same time. She's free to do whatever she wants, plans murders, frames people, does all the things. But she's also trapped by her choices as she had to do it. The writers aren't interested in explaining her motivations. They could easily tie this to her actual upbringing that we've learned about on the show and how, like Harmony did with her, she conflates what she perceives to be good for her to automatically be good for her children. This would tie all of Willow's actions back to her original storyline with Dawn of Day. They could emphasize that the reason that she is so hyper focused on having her kids with her is because she grew up with a mother who did not put her first. A woman who chose a man over her daughter. And without realizing it, that's Willow became a mother who did the same thing. Essentially, that like she was raised by a woman who chose to put a man over her daughter, and that Willow became the exact same thing she was trying to not be. And that as much as she wanted to break the cycle with her children, she ended up repeating it. And they could have written Willow to slowly come to this realization over the course of the storyline and have that be the motivation for why she shot Drew. But they didn't write that because these writers are not interested in explaining Willow's motivations the way that the writers of the Metro Court hostage crisis were interested in explaining the motivations of their characters. Instead, the writers of the Who Shot Drew storyline are more interested in explaining away Willow's actions, why she had to do it, and not her motivations. Actions and motivations are not the same. When you hyper focus on explaining characters' actions, it usually involves very surface deep motivations. Willow has to shoot Drew because it's his fault she lost her kids. She has to frame Michael because he's being unreasonable in her eyes. But overarching motivations are deeper. They connect to the larger story that each character is attached to. Sky's motivations were driven by the stories that predated her being on General Hospital. They were tied to her broken idea of what family was. Willow's motivations, on the other hand, are driven by the immediate circumstances of her situation, a situation that she caused by her own immediate actions. This makes Willow not only a hard character to root for, more importantly, it makes her a hard character to understand or relate to. Imagine if Willow's choices were tied to her larger story, her longer story on General Hospital. Or if she was given room to actually reflect on her choices, like Maxie was in The Vault, or Sky with Lorenzo. Or if Michael was written like a petty dick who was keeping her children from her out of spite, instead of being written like Saint Michael, protector of children and sex workers. Some people, myself included, would still be able to root for Michael even if he was being petty. But we would also be able to, if not root for Willow, at least understand her motivations to frame him. Now Willow isn't just shooting Drew solely because she blames him for ruining her life, but because he is the most logical person to shoot to frame Michael. We've landed in the same place, but we were driven there through characters rather than the plot. Drew's shooting wouldn't be the story. It's the vehicle that allows us to explore the characters' motivations rather than their overall actions, which are not fucking interesting. At least not to me. During the main difference between the hostage crisis and Who Shot Drew storyline is that during the MetroCart hostage crisis, the audience is not meant to root for every character. You're not supposed to be on Jerry's side. You're not supposed to be on Sky's side. You're not supposed to be on Lorenzo Alcazar's side. You know, you're really not supposed to be on Cooper's side, though they have you kind of like teeter towards them. You got some sus-ass characters. You know, you got to deal with Carly and how she used to treat Robin and her HIV status. It's the whole thing. You're not meant to root for everybody. Some of these people truly suck. But we are given the tools to understand the choices that every fucking character makes during the story, regardless of whether or not you agree with them or you root for them. That's what makes the Metro Court hostage situation truly a great story. And in my humble opinion, the best story that GH has ever told. And so, thank you for listening. I can't believe I got through it. The mic was on the whole time. I'm so excited about that. If you like that once more, please feel free to like, to subscribe, and let me know if you would like me to do more OG storyline breakdowns like this, because this was actually very fun. Hopefully the show picks up a bit and I can maybe do a mix of both. Like I have a recap episode and then I'll do more of like a video essay style breakdown of like an older storyline. Maybe I'll put up some polls like what would you guys like to hear? But, you know, hit me up in the comments. What do you think? You like, you don't like, you have any thoughts, you have any opinions, you want to add anything, you think there's something I left out that's really important, you think there's something that changes the context of the story, let me know. But thank y'all again, and I'll see you next week. Bye.